how to fix your porn habit very quickly by addressing the single greatest contributor to your porn addiction in the first place. I was just mentoring a guy right now that's in our program, and he was, having a rough day and he had a relapse. And anytime someone does have a relapse or is even urged to relapse, I always like to peel it back and ask, kind of what happened. And it got I have no judgment, guys. I'm just heart of compassion, because I've been through it myself, and I've been working with hundreds of guys who are going through it and seen a lot of success. But when people make mistakes, the only thing I think as a mentor is, man, I hope that they still know they're loved and accepted and there's grace for them. I hope they still know that they're worthy of acceptance, love, and grace and all that. Because with a heart of compassion, there's no judgment at all. All right, so he shared that, and that he had a slip up. And so I tried to peel back. I was like, okay, what happened before that? Because he's like, oh, because I saw something online, like on YouTube, and kind of a sexually triggery thumbnail. And I was like, okay, so that was an external trigger. What happened before that? And he was like, oh, well, and then it kind of helped him peel back. And then he identified that every time he feels this sense of trigger, right? The trigger. And I asked him, like, okay, is there sometimes that you do see something online that makes you go down this thought pattern of eventually PMOing? And is there sometimes that you don't feel triggered by that stuff? And he was like, yeah, sometimes I feel susceptible to triggers and sometimes I don't. And I was like, okay, so that means, guys, that there is a certain emotional state that you're in when you see an external trigger that causes you to feel this need to go down that rabbit hole. And then sometimes you're not susceptible. So that means it's nothing to do with the external trigger, but it's more to do about your internal state. And that's what I call the internal trigger. Okay, so we peeled it back more. And so I asked him about earlier in the day, like what was his feeling? What was his emotional state throughout the day? And he said, I was feeling very anxious and stressed. And I was like, oh, okay, why is that? And he's like, because I was having conversation with my friend, and he's my best friend, a good friend, and he didn't, they didn't have a good connection, or they didn't really relate very well that day. And maybe there was some tension in the relationship. And I was like, okay, interesting. So we peeled that back more and asked, okay, why is it that you value this relationship so much with your friend? He's like, oh, because he's my best friend. And we peel it back until we realized that, and this goes for everyone, not just this guy that I'm mentoring, that everyone has this a certain level of this approval and disapproval dichotomy in his life. And you realize that if he feels like he's disapproving of people, or he's receiving disappointment from people in his life through his work, through school, through anything, then he feels like this emptiness, or in other words, kind of like a unworthiness of receiving love and attention and appreciation and grace from people. And when he's in that state of feeling that he's being disapproved of, he's way, way, way more susceptible to acting out. And this is my situation, guys, for many years with my porn addiction. And so what it really comes down to is figuring out that emotional trigger, right? And so we peeled it back more. And then this is what I told him. All right, so we identified that his biggest roadblock, the biggest knot in his system, the biggest knot in his back, is this relationship with a friend. All right, you with me? So in this situation where his emotional state is very much dependent on how he's feeling in a relationship with a specific person, right? And this doesn't have to be a friend. This could be a partner, a spouse, a wife, a parent. If your entire emotional support system is dependent on one person to make you feel aroused and acting out, that's not a good situation. I'm not saying that they're a bad person or anything, but it's not a sustainable long-term recovery plan to have one person that you're relying on to be your support system. You following? So he was like, oh, okay. So I said, what in this situation, what are your options? There's 3 options you can do. Guys, I'm making this video for everyone who has one particular point of stress in your life that's causing you to be most susceptible to acting out. And usually there's always one that's the biggest. And when you address that one stressor, then your chances of beating porn go through the roof, because you don't need porn anymore, right? So in this situation, we were like, okay, option 1, you could just make it a point to connect with this friend a lot, like every day, multiple times a day, and make sure that you're always on good terms and you're always really feeling loved and connected with him. That's option number 1. Okay, so that's kind of like, it's not a very stable system, because friendships change, people pass on, situations change, etc., etc. God forbid something happens. Option 2 is you develop a larger support system, so you have more people in your life to connect with and to fill yourself up with that forgiveness and approval and love and whatever you need in your life. That's option 2. Option 3 here, what is it? If you're smart, you can figure it out. Option 3 is that you learn how to just be okay with being disapproved of, or be okay with not having a perfect relationship with this guy, and just have that not affect you to the point that you require to go back to porn and masturbation. That's option number 3. You see where we're going with this? Obviously, the best option is to grow yourself and improve yourself to the point that this dichotomy of am I loved, am I not loved, am I approved of, am I disapproved of, am I appreciated, am I unappreciated, disappears, and it doesn't affect you that much. That's the ultimate goal. Or guys, you can work on all 3 simultaneously. And so this is this guy's action plan, right? Is he's figuring out a way to connect with his friend on a deeper level than just talking about whatever, and also improving his support system to include other friends, to include his community, to include his parents, people in his family. And number 3, work on the actual root cause issue, which is you have this dichotomy of am I approved of, am I not approved of, and come to a place where you just are okay with being approved of or not being approved of, and it doesn't really affect you so intensely. So that's really the solution that we're getting to. So I'm making this video because I really want you to think about what is your primary roadblock, like what is your biggest stress here in your life, that if you get rid of that, it'll increase your odds in beating porn. For me, I'll share my experience. It was my relationship with my wife, all right? In particular, every time we were fighting and arguing with my wife, we've done a lot of that, trust me, over the 12 years that we've been married, I went to porn every single mother effing time, every time, like clockwork, right? Every single time we were arguing, or she was not feeling happy, or she was, whatever, I would go back to porn. Why? And it was always because she was not in a good mood. And when people are not in a good mood, they tend to get snappy. And when she was kind of snappy at me, then I would start to spiral out of control and make it about me. You see where I'm going with this? Until I had to peel it back and realize, like, why is it that someone else's happiness has to dictate and control my own happiness? Of course I love her, of course I'm compassionate for her, but when she really needs me, and when she's really feeling depressed or sad or angry, whatever, why is it that I also become like that? Why is it that I can't just be a strong support system for her? And until I realized, like, actually I have a lot of insecurity around this relationship with my wife, in that if my wife is not happy, then I feel like I'm failing as a man. And this is really common for us guys, right? Happy wife, happy life, right? They say. Happy wife, happy life it's true. It is a very true statement, but it's actually a lot of BS, because it's really unfortunate. Why should someone else's happiness dictate my happiness? I wish I could just be the guy. This is what I thought. I wish I could just be the guy that was okay with my wife having a bad day and it didn't really affect me, and I could just be supportive and understanding of her without me also spiraling out of control. So what happened is I made it about me. I made it about how I'm a bad husband, I'm a bad father, I'm a bad provider, and I made it about that. And I felt like I was disapproved of by her, by my parents, by God, and because I'm a failing father because my wife is not. It's stupid, right? So this was it, guys. This was the fundamental contributor to my porn habit over and over again. So what did I do, guys? I addressed the real reason that I had the porn habit, which was this dichotomy I was experiencing, that if I didn't feel loved or approved of, then I went to porn. So I fixed it by creating a bigger support system in my life that was not just my wife. And I was always relying on my wife to kind of make me feel filled up and loved and appreciated and all that. But when she wasn't feeling good and up for that, I would always go to porn. So what did I do? I addressed the single reason that I had a porn habit, and I created a larger support system, as well as fixing this dichotomy I was feeling to the point that I am okay with feeling disapproved of or approved of, or I'm a lot better at this dichotomy thing. And I'm okay with people not liking me. I'm okay with people disapproving of me, right? So my task for you guys right here is that you have to think about the last time that you acted out and you relapsed, and you have to figure out what led to that. And don't say it was something you saw online. Don't say it was Instagram. Don't say it was YouTube, whatever. It's an emotional state that you were in when you saw that thing that caused you to eventually act out and go down that rabbit hole. It's not the external factor, it's the internal trigger, the internal state of mind that is the actual trigger. So address that, fix that, guys, and I promise you, your chances of quitting porn will increase dramatically. It will be significantly easier to beat this thing for good because you won't need it anymore.
If you liked this video, you're gonna love a bunch of the other videos right here to help you quit porn and masturbation. Let's go. Do follow. I'll see you there.